Hello, and welcome to your lesson for myfreeactingclass.com for Wednesday, January the 27th. My name is Michael Bean. I am an actor and an acting teacher. It's funny, I actually don't think I ever talk about my experience as an actor on this lesson very often, but I've been working professionally as a film and TV actor since 2002, and I've been in a bunch of TV shows and movies. I also have been an acting teacher for most of the last 20 years. I'm in transition right now from played a lot of doctors and scientists for a while there. A lot of doctors and scientists. And now seem to be transitioning more into bad guys. Like just really waiting for that first really solid bad guy role. Because I mean, let's think about it. If we're talking about the stereotype world of conventional film and TV, who's the white bald guy with the beard? He's the bad guy. That's right. Actually, that's not true. Like you can also be, like a thug or in the military, but you have to have I don't know, like 80 more pounds of muscle than I do. And that sounds like a lot of work building that much muscle. I'm just not gonna do it. I'd rather spend my time, teaching you guys and doing yoga. So today we're having a Ask Me Anything session, and I'm thrilled to have you all joining us. Hi, Maya. Thanks for joining. Uh, and so let's start wherever it is you want to start. It always feels like 25 minutes, half an hour is going to be an enormous amount of time, and then somehow, poof, it's just gone. So I'm happy to talk about industry things, and it's fine if it's something that we've covered here before. Your specific question always ends up being an opening into the work in a way that can be really useful for people. I'm happy to talk about the sort of inner work of building character. And then if you run out of questions, then we'll pull up a script and we'll do a quick script analysis and look at a script together. Um, Also, I want to say thanks to all the folks who are sending in tapes. We had a whole bunch of tapes yesterday, and Christina already sent one in for next week. Yeah, Christina. So please keep sending in your 1-2 lines, because that's really all it takes to give it a shot, get some feedback. And if it gets to the point where one of you is sending me one of these little 2-line scripts every day, I'll just be excited about that. I'll be like, oh my gosh, you know what Jade did? Jade sent me 7 of them, and we're gonna watch all 7 of them back to back. Because what would that take? Like a minute, and then talk about them. Yeah, I would just be excited if so no pressure, of course, but just throwing it out there that I'm excited about the tape. So where would you like to start today? Does somebody have a question? You're welcome if you are. Yeah, great.
Oh,
Please.
okay. So for my question is a lot about how do you critique your own self-tapes or work? Because I've been doing a couple self-tapes to prepare, or when
Yeah,
I'm prepared for an audition, I want to figure out how can I look at myself and figure out what I can work on.
it's a great
Like,
question.
yeah, I just don't know how to do some good self-critique.
Of course. So I'm going to reiterate something that I've said in previous lessons, which is having your work sound and look like you. So you're like, oh, this just looks and sounds like me when I talk, is important. And that's hard to, because you're not outside yourself. That is hard to judge initially. And one of the best ways that I know is to look at baseline footage. Basically, go back through your archive, because probably on your phone somewhere you have footage of you just talking and being normal and dorky and weird. And then you listen to your voice and you're like, okay, does my voice in that one sound like my voice in this one, and why not? Yeah, so that's one thing you can do, and you'll see that in goal setting literature of all kinds is to benchmark. Basically say, like, what is my baseline, right? Like if you were trying to make a particular muscle stronger, first you'd be like, well, how many chin-ups can I do? And then you would lay out a plan to make your biceps stronger, and then you'd be able to track later, like, are my biceps getting stronger because of the number of chin-ups I'm doing? You see what I'm saying? It's not a perfect example, but or analogy, but the idea is, if you've got that benchmark, it might help you hear it. And now the other thing is, you can do is you can submit them here, and then I can say, here's what I'm seeing and hearing from the outside. You can run them by other people. If you are right, so outside opinions can be useful. I would say that I'm hopelessly biased. I would say that an expert outside opinion is probably like the most relevant, of course, right? Because somebody who's looked at 10,000 tapes is just going to have, more of a baseline for assessing that. You could, and I don't know anybody who's tried this, but I've recommended it in the past. And if one of you tries it, I would be very curious. Like, let's say that you are particularly connected to folks on social media, especially now in the pandemic. You're like, oh yeah, I have 20 friends who we're all on the same Snapchat thread. We do this all the time. You could take a clip of that and send it out to, say at least 10 people, and say something, but you have to make it a really simple ask. Like, you wouldn't say, is this good acting? Because, like, what do they know? They might have an opinion, but they're very unlikely to have experience or expertise, and probably will have an opinion, especially if you're sending it to dudes. Like, dudes will say, well, I'll tell you. And like, it's the kind of thing that just makes me want to, like, that's a, like, because patriarchy thing, and we want to, like, apologize for dudes everywhere, but just like, be wary of anybody who says, like, I know, I'm totally sure what you should do with yourself. You definitely want to reality check that one with, like, wait, what experience does that person have that they're using to base that opinion on? Or did they just feel sure because they like feeling sure? Now, if you did send it out to 10 friends, what you would be looking for is patterns, right? I had one of my dance teachers, a woman named Angelica Doni from Russia, brilliant teacher. She said, and I'll get her accent wrong, but it's Russian. So she's like, if one person says, ignore. If two people says, ignore. If 7 people say the same thing, maybe you listen. Which I really liked. that makes a certain amount of sense to me, especially if you're asking people who are not acting teachers, who are not acting coaches, who don't have that experience. And if 7 people are like, I don't know, this just doesn't sound like you, then that might be useful information. That's an exercise I've had people do with headshots more. If they basically, you get a really good picture of yourself, and then you send it to your friends, and you're like, okay, like, I already know this is a good picture, but are you like, yeah, that's definitely Amy when you look at the picture? And if 7 out of 10 people are like, yeah, totally, then that can sometimes give you a benchmark of whether that's a useful headshot. Because it's really important that when you show up in person or when you're doing a self-tape, they're like, oh yeah, that's exactly who we were expecting from the photograph. Now, I will also add that in terms of, like, getting better as an actor, and if you go back and watch some of the lessons in the video archive on goal setting, this shows up. Something that really had a bunch of my focus in the fall, so like November and December. Uh, the If you choose one thing to focus on, that's likely to give you the best results, because acting is so complex that there are 27 things that you're trying to do all at once. Yeah, and if you're trying to track all 27 things, then you're basically setting yourself up to be disappointed in your work, no matter how much energy or of your that you've put into it. Does that make sense, Amy? Yeah, and so if you pick one thing, right, like, let's say one thing is, I just want to make sure that it looks and sounds realistic, like that it just looks like me talking. And on the benchmark, I'm going to play that little clip of me talking about my breakfast. Then I'm going to play the little clip of the thing. Yeah, okay, I can hear the difference in my voice, because when I'm acting, I do this kind of flatter voice, like I'm reading. Oh, okay, so I can deal with that. Okay, now when I'm acting, everything's like super quiet, like I'm scared to not be realistic. Oh, okay, that's not like me talking about breakfast. And you slowly focus on just that one thing until you've got that one thing. Then you're building in success for yourself, which is likely to make it more fun, likely to make you want to keep practicing. You also are genuinely working towards the skill set that you want. And if you're like, okay, what's my one thing? I can already do the realistic thing. Now what? Then come to class and ask me, and I'll give you a suggestion for the next few things.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Great question. Now, Candy said, when you brought up taking risks, what does that really look like? And so, just so that I understand your question, Candy, you mean the kinds of risks that I'm suggesting that people take when they're doing their uh, self tapes? The ones that I'm reviewing on Tuesday. Okay, so in that context, what I mean is, by risk, is that somebody is revealing more of themselves inside the character, right? So one way to think about being a professional film and TV actor is that it's this combination of you and the story, and you have to tell the story. Right? Like it's like, well, I'm a goof, but my character's a serial killer. It's like, well, okay, you still have to tell the serial killer story, and maybe it's a slightly goofy serial killer because they're putting you in it. But you can't just be like, waha, waka waka, die die die. Like that's not gonna work. You can't be like you're like auditioning for a Nickelodeon comedy, and you can't be like, yeah, but I'm really dark and serious. So you go like, what's up, Nickelodeon comedy people? I'm dark and serious. Like it's just not going to work. Right. So you still have to tell the story. And so when I say take a risk, I don't mean take a risk by rewriting the story in some way. A lot of time and money and energy has gone into writing the story. And they want the story a particular way, and they're looking for people to tell the story they want to tell. So the place to take risks is with yourself. And it's like how you fit into the story, right? Because you're really like what fills it up. Right, the story is still there, right? That person is like the goofy character in the Nickelodeon show. But then how you go into it, you're like, yeah, but like I'm this particular kind of weird, and here's the things that I like, and it's like my relationship with my friend Yo, where we're just like sort of really all about words and ideas, and like goofy with each other, but also trying to be really smart, and like, and that's the kind of goofy I'm gonna bring because that's the kind of goofy that I know. And so inside of that, if I'm going to take a risk, I might go, okay, it's that on like a day where I'm particularly like fired up and silly. It's like, oh right, hey, at like that time, 8 weeks ago, when it was like we were talking at like 11 o'clock at night, and I just couldn't stop laughing for some stupid reason. And it's like, and so I'm going to bring some of that into it. Like it doesn't contradict the story. It still fits the story of the big happy goofy guy, but it doesn't say anything in the script about the fact that like I can't stop laughing, because I think my friend is so hilarious. But I'm going to bring that, because that's going to be a challenge. Like the risk really is, can I actually bring that in a realistic way? Like can I actually find that in myself and bring it to the story? Because if I can, that's interesting. Not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody can bring that extra life to it, and not everybody's going to even think of it because I'm really using something personal to myself to fill it up. And this was echoed by a workshop that I had. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting her last name right now, but Marina, who's a Candice Elzinga's associate, casting associate. Candice Elzinga is a Vancouver-based casting director. So she came in and did a workshop for my spring break students, I think, in 2019. And in the space of about 5 minutes, she both said like, take risks. We just want you to take risks. And then within 5 minutes, she's like, just don't take any crazy risks. Uh, and so I was like, you just said opposite things. And I wonder if what you mean is that you don't want people to take risks with the story, but you want people to take risks with themselves. And she was like, yes, that's exactly it. So at least one casting director agrees with me. This is not, this is not a complete survey, but it's as close as I have to saying, well, here's why I have this opinion, and here's why I think it is accurate. Because telling that story is still really important to people. All right. Candy, does that answer your question? And so then in the context of these single lines of dialogue, where you actually are making up the story, right? If you're just doing a single line of dialogue, well, then you can take whatever kind of risk you want, right? Like, I don't know if you saw, Natalia's from yesterday, where she's got the Viking helmet. I mean, that's a risk, where she's like, and like with this totally straight, sober face, puts on a plastic Viking helmet like she's really badass. And says the line, that's definitely a risk. That's a story risk. That's like her being playful in a way that fits her version of the story. And nobody else is going to do it quite like that, partly because nobody else is going to have that kind of Viking helmet sitting around. Um, but that's an example, of somebody who's taking a risk with their work. Okay. Did you have any follow up questions there? Did I answer your question, Candy? Okay, great. Uh, Question. You know, the Maya, Christina, Jade, Claudine, is there anything that I can talk about that might be particularly useful for you? Particularly you, Claudine, because you're in a different position from the other folks here, because you're um, not only like engaging as an artist, but you're also sort of a de facto acting coach, for several young people. which is an interesting situation that parents can be in. And so some of the things that I would say to somebody who wanted to learn to be an acting coach, which I wouldn't normally talk about in this lesson, might be useful or relevant for you.
Um, I don't know what questions I got. I think with the risk taking thing,
Yeah.
it's a bit different with kids as well because, like, for instance, commercials, sometimes they say, sometimes the kids with the who are overactive and hyper and that can get the job because they're really pushing their character over. So you find sometimes that those kids got the jobs as opposed to yours that behaved, and so sometimes it's hard to know what way to tell them to go in a commercial casting. I mean, the American casting that Christian did, um, he just had to talk about what he had for breakfast. And I suggested to him to, so that they can hear his American accent, I said to him to run off, like just say loads of different things like carrots, mushrooms, and just anything. I can't remember, candy. And then he said, "Oh, only joking. I had Frosties with milk." So he kind of, instead of just coming out like I had Frosties with milk for breakfast and that's it, I told him to run off a list and then just say, "Are you joking?" So it brings out a bit of character. But then I don't know whether that was too much because he did it quite excited and fun and that, and it might have been too much because it wasn't for a commercial, it was for a TV series.
Right. That was the one where the director was like, just talk, like just say
Oh no, that was another one.
it was a
So
different.
that was another one. That was another one. But this was the American accent one. So I mean, maybe for the commercials they should be different than for the TV series. I don't know. Should he have been a bit more low key because it was a TV series? Not been so excited, or
Mm. Uh, in that
he's a kid as well.
in
He's
that
auditioning
in
as a
that
kid.
specific instance, like it's I think like there is an answer to that one, because you have information after it's happened. What you're what I am sensing inside your question is there a way to know beforehand, whether they want like sort of stripped down and real or like big and fun and exciting? And that one's much trickier, right? So at least in terms of like supporting Christian, the best thing is for him to be able to take direction, and that's really tricky. Like, so the best thing is for him to go in with whatever the two of your best guess is on it, and if they're like, yeah, do it again, but just like have more fun, that he can. And if they're like, yeah, do it again, but like just do it really simply, they can. Especially with kids, the ability to take direction is, I think, like the most important or the most relevant, because they know that different weird things are going to come up on set. They're not expecting that somebody's got years and years and years of professional experience behind them. What they really want is somebody who can take an adjustment and who can take an adjustment uh, on the session, where they're like, do this, and they can go, yeah, okay, and they can actually make the adjustment. So I think that the best way to support Christian is to find multiple ways of doing it, and to be ready to be flexible.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the complaint that I hear from casting directors with young people, is that they will come in and it doesn't always happen, and it certainly doesn't, and it doesn't even always happen with the same actor. But sometimes young actors, when they get escalated, when they get excited, when they get anxious, the way that they manage that anxiety is by going into, here is the performance that I will give, and I don't have to think about it, right? And so they'll sort of revert to like a very specific delivery that they rehearsed typically with their parents. And so then it's got this kind of musical quality that doesn't sound like a person talking. And doesn't matter whether that's excited, or naturalistic. And sometimes it's like, sometimes that first read is actually very skilled, or is very believable. And even then the director producer will be like, great, try it this other way. Because what they're really testing is like, did it take him an hour to get this to where he can say this one line? Can he say it other ways? And if he can't, then that's a red flag. Because things are going to change on set. There's going to be 60 people watching. They might change the line, they might change the delivery. And so in terms of supporting him for the audition, I think that your kind of basic point of like, do they want it big or do they want it stripped down and real? In general, for commercials, they're going to want it more energy because they're only seeing the kid for 2 or 3 seconds at a time. Cheerios! And then they cut away to like, oh, Cheerios are great. And then for film and TV, realism typically is going to be more important unless you're going out for one of those Disney Nickelodeon shows, in which case, right, do you see what I'm saying? So like style is still relevant, but if you're helping him prep, you could just choose to do both. You could say, okay, we're going to prep the super simple stripped down realistic version, and then we're going to prep the like big silly version where you're having lots of fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you're already doing this, but I'm going to, for anybody watching, I'm going to go through it, which is that particularly with young people, but I think it actually is relevant for the rest of us as well. And I should point at myself, is that there's a result that I want as an actor, right? So, like I said, I've started going out for these, sort of terrible people, like mean bosses and terrible lawyers and murderers and villains. And I haven't booked one yet, but when I do, I'll let y'all know. And so there's a result that I want. Like, let's say I want my character to be dangerous. And if I play dangerous, nobody is walking around through the world going dangerous, 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 dangerous. Right? So if I try and put dangerous on purpose, if I try and make my dangerous face and like scowl and be dangerous, it's just going to look super fake and weird. So there is a result that I want. I'm playing a character and I want it to be very different from my normal social persona. I want the character to come across as dangerous. And then I have to be creative about the world that I put myself in, right? So that dangerous comes not from the face that I'm making or the way that I say the lines, right? I'm not putting my eyes here. I'm putting my eyes out here into the world and going, okay, what do I need to imagine about all of these people so that it will come across as dangerous? And that's really a fun, interesting, complex creative process. Right? I want my character to seem angry, but I can't play angry or it's going to seem fake and forced. Instead, I just need to imagine that Amy has come into my kitchen and dropped a gallon of milk on the floor, and is and because I, oh my God, I just hate that so much, and right, and so and it doesn't matter what it is. Like we could be doing a scene, where I'm supposed to be doing the scene with Amy, and I'm holding a gun on her and she's my arch nemesis. But if what really fires me up in this moment is like, you dropped a gallon of milk on my floor, I'm gonna have to mop this stupid floor. I hate mopping floors, Amy. I hate you. Then, and as long as I say the lines that are like, you should never have come back here, now you're gonna die. As long as if I'm filling that up with like, how dare you drop milk on my floor? Nobody knows. Nobody's gonna know. And so one of the things that you can do, particularly with little people, is instead of saying, now say it like this, you say, okay, now you're talking to so-and-so. Like now it's like this, like it's grandma and she just arrived and you haven't seen her for 6 months, right? Like now this is, like you're being bullied at school, and like this is you like talking to the school counselor saying the line, right? Like you sort of paint the picture of like what is the world, and that kind of works out their imagination, and you end up getting really different deliveries. And so I think that that's the thing that as actors we can feed to ourselves. It's like, yes, of course there's a result that I want. When I ask especially actors who are new to class, what's going on in your scene, they'll say like an oversimplification. They'll say, my character is sad. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. But like, what's the story? And they'll be like, my character is sad. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like, what's the story? Like, and then that's when we have to dig in deeper and go like, oh, okay, right. My character is sad because they feel like their mom doesn't understand them, and their best friend just blah, 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 blah. And here's what's happening at school. Okay, so there's more going on in the story. And then I get more than just like, I'm going to paint the whole scene blue. And I start to get, oh, right, real person in a place having an experience. And I've seen that work with kids as young as 5. Is the other thing, Claudine, is that if you try that and it just doesn't work, right? Like you're experimenting, with like finding language to describe the story, and it's just not quite getting there. Possibly because, I don't know, how do you know the mind of, how old is Christian again? 10?
He's 9.
Right? Like, they're mysteries. These little people, like, who knows what's going on in there, right? And so when I'm teaching that age group, if I'm just not quite able to like guess the language that will lead them into the story in a feeling way, I will do what's called paraphrasing. And this is, again, is an exercise that y'all can do for yourselves. And so Candy, Christina, Amy, Jade, I would love to see you try this for yourself with your character line exercise, with the one line exercise, and just see if it does anything for you, which is that you put it into your own words in emotionally charged language, right? So, if the line is, what did you say? I had Frosties for breakfast.
Yeah.
Yep, right. So if the line is, I had Frosties for breakfast, and you don't want to play happy, and you're like, and I'm trying to talk him into, okay, like, I know you're saying the word Frosties, but like what you're really saying is like, I got the new Pokemon game I wanted, and say it like that. And he's like, I had Frosties for breakfast, and not changing it. Then I'll say, then I'll say, okay, okay, Christian, say, oh my God, Pokemon, and I just get him to say that. And then I'll get him to say, and then he'll say, "Oh my God, Pokemon!" And then I'll say, "Okay, cool. Say the line like you said that." And then usually I'll get a version of like, "I had Frosties for breakfast," and then I don't have to say it like me, because especially if kids are like very connected to their parents, they will accidentally try and get it right and copy your inflection and copy your tone and copy the way you say it, and so very often. That's what results in a kid going into an audition and not sounding like a kid. Yeah, and if you want to correct for that, then what you do is you just try and avoid ever saying their lines to them. Instead, you can lead them emotionally with a paraphrase. And then say, now say the line like you said that, and then
Okay,
they're
that's a good idea.
finding it for themselves.
Yeah.
And for those of you, because Candy, I talked to you about this. I think after one of your last self-tape exercises, where it was like, okay, great, like you've got a great foundation of believability, and you're very quiet. So now practice taking up more space. So instead of doing that in an abstract way, once you've got your story, if your line is like, get out of here, then you're like, okay, so my lines get out of here. But what I want to say is like, I'm freaking out. And then you go, I'm freaking out. And then you roll the camera and you're like, get out of here. Right. That you find that, in a fun way in your own language, and you just mess around until you find something that like really activates you. Yeah, and I've done that where I'm doing scene study or working on a longer script, where I'll do that for every line. Me and my scene partner, will like, I'll say what I think I mean, and then I'll say the line, and then they'll say what they think they mean, and then they'll say the line. And I find it a really useful exploration exercise in terms of bringing my own specific opinion and my own specific feeling into it. It also sometimes helps me go, oh, I don't actually know what I mean here. I don't know what I feel here. No wonder the line's kind of flat and boring. Like because when I look for it in my own words, I got nothing. So got to make some kind of choice about that. And does anybody have a last question before we wrap up today? Okay. Well, we're just a smidge past 4:30, and y'all got busy lives. So I'm grateful that you chose to spend half an hour of your week with me. Leanne did have technical issues on Monday. Claudine, you asked about it. So Leanne will be back. We figured it out. And so her lesson will be back on Monday. You can join us again next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Please keep the self-tapes coming. I am loving reviewing them. And I will see all of you soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.